The recent announcement of Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, the next entry in Digital Eclipse's Gold Master series, has got me pumped. Not just because Space Draft creator Jeff Minter is a developer with a massive legacy, known for his unique psychedelic aesthetic and for being, well, super into animals, but because the work Digital Eclipse is doing in their recent releases is vital in preserving the history of video games and legitimizing the medium as an art form. Let's talk about Atari 50 and the making of Karateka and why they're so important for this industry. Digital Eclipse is no new kid on the block, with a history spanning over 30 years. But its current incarnation has been focused on restoring video game classics to modern platforms in comprehensive packages that shed light on the history of these releases and their impact on the industry. These have always been rock-solid, exhaustive, well-emulated compilations, and built a reputation for Digital Eclipse to resurrect old gaming relics. But a release from 2022 set forward a vision for how gaming history can be presented to a home audience. Quite possibly the greatest retro games collection released to that point. This is Atari 50, assembling over 100 games released over Atari's 50-year history. Alright. And I know what some of you might be thinking. Atari? Aren't all their games kind of old and crappy at this point? Why would anyone want to play those? And to a small degree, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Thing is, the games aren't the main focus of this collection. Let me share a memory with you. When visiting Melbourne in 2008, I went to ACME, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image, for their Game On exhibition. Charting the history of video games to that point, the exhibition was a chronologically organised series of stations where you can play games dating back to the 60s, all the way through to modern day releases of that time. When I was there, everything about games history finally clicked in my teenage brain. I could have run down the what of early video gaming, but now I could see the how of how Donkey Kong can lead to Mario Brothers, which leads to Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario World, and now can pave the way for one of the year's most celebrated releases, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Atari 50 provides a similar experience. Through their timeline mechanic, the title essentially functions as an interactive museum piece.
Atari home computers can teach you or reach you with important information anytime, day or night.
I already checked the computer, the bear's lost.
You're charting the entire 50-year history of Atari through archival documents, modern-day interviews with the people involved, and of course, the games themselves. You can see how so much of the beginning of video games were born out of Atari and can follow along with their downfall as we approach the 90s releases of the Lynx and the Jaguar. I mean, Cybermorph is a truly terrible game, but it's important to know why Cybermorph is a truly terrible game. And even though this is a title published by Atari, this collection didn't shy away from some of the more scandalous elements of the company's history.
Drugs were consumed at Atari by all kinds of people at all levels of management.
We would just fire up right in the office. It's like, who knows why? It's like, this is like, it's illegal. It's like...
Now, the most novel thing about this collection is the brand new games packaged inside, developed by Digital Eclipse just for Atari 50. Perhaps it's hard to play a lot of Atari's classic games in the modern age, but by including these reimagined titles like Vector Sector or Yav's Revenge Enhanced, we can appreciate what it might have been like to play these games when they were released from a modern lens. So I don't care what anyone says, Yav's Revenge is as awesome today as it was in 1982. The studio had a template that they could apply to other areas of gaming history, and in August 2023 they did just that with their first title in the newly established Gold Master series. The Making of Karateka is an intricate deep dive into one of the most influential games of the 1980s. Now here's where my retro gaming credentials will come into question, but I never played Karateka, and aside from the name I knew next to nothing about it. Hell, I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing it properly. Only there was a way to check that.
I called it Karateka, but I've since found out that pretty much everybody pronounced it differently. So however you pronounce it is fine. Don't feel bad. It's all good.
But even with my lack of personal nostalgia, the Making of Karateka is absolutely fascinating, with the astonishing amount of archived documentation providing an understanding of how this Apple II title was created by Jordan Mechner and went on to influence the sort of games being made today.
What Karateka really brought to the table was sort of filmic language.
This is the first game I had ever seen where somebody fell in love.
And this is where these releases from Digital Eclipse are so impressive and crucial. Context. You can play Karateka today on its own, and yeah, it's alright, but if you have no familiarity with the game, the whole thing feels a bit whatever. And if you have the familiarity with it, what reason do you have to play it in 2023?
I can still remember the thrill that I felt on seeing that little figure moving across the screen.
But the context provided by the Making of Karateka makes this an entirely worthy experience to play today. You get 3 different ports of the game and a series of prototypes that go to show how the final game came together, as well as painting an impression of the technology of the time. If you don't feel like playing, you can even watch a playthrough of Karateka with commentary by Jordan and his dad.
The Apple II didn't have things like scrolling built in, so we actually had to copy each line of pixels, erase it, and then redraw it 1 line higher.
I remember the first time reading that, I realized that this game was going to be a success.
And if something looks interesting, you could hit a button and start playing from that exact same point. The Making of Karateka also details the history of Death Bounce, the earlier game from Jordan Mechner that was never released. And much like Atari 50, Digital Eclipse has created modern interpretations of both Karateka and Death Bounce that make these games extremely playable for a modern audience, while still staying true to the spirit of the original titles. With the Making of Karateka and the establishment of the Gold Master series, gaming finally has its own version of the Criterion Collection, allowing audiences to see a definitive article of how some of gaming's most important titles came to be. In August 2023, it was announced that Digital Eclipse were going to be acquired by Atari. This had me slightly concerned, given Atari in recent years had made some moves into areas that were, well, let's just say interesting. I also feared that it might limit Digital Eclipse to just putting out releases of classic Atari games, although the studio was quick to clarify that that wasn't the case. Current CEO Wade Rosen, at least publicly, seems to have a genuine interest in classic games and has been making many moves to build something that pays respect to their history. Purchasing Digital Eclipse lines up with that strategy, but I guess only time will tell to see where everything shakes out. Hopefully the studio continues to get the support to make the Gold Master series the best it can be, not only because it's an enjoyable commercial product, but because these entries are providing an important public service towards video game preservation and making their history accessible to everybody. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments. This is clearly a small channel, and that sort of engagement goes a long way towards me making more videos. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.